Here's another example of perspective correction. This is the Powhatan National Bank building. I think it's a different bank now, but Louis Sullivan designed building in Grinnell, Iowa. I took a quick snapshot of this. I didn't have time to really center and line things up really well. I wasn't perfectly square to the building. I didn't have a view camera with tilts and swings to adjust perspective there, but that's okay because we can do that in Photoshop with Command-Shift-R lens correction. This one was shot with a Nikon D70 with an 18 to 70 millimeter zoom lens, and it doesn't know the camera. That particular camera is not listed here, the D70. The D90 is, but not the D70. But it does know the lens, so it corrects for the lens. And if I turn that off, you can see a slight change because it's making a geometric correction for the lens. If there was any known chromatic aberration, it would fix that. And if the lens tended to vignette at the outsides, it would fix that, but this doesn't. On the custom tab, I think the first thing I would do is probably try to correct rotation, going slightly to the right on my rotation. So I give it a minus, I think a minus 0.75. Let me move my grid over here, right next to the bottom of the building. Actually try to get it even with the building on both sides. There. Okay, I think I still have some rotation issues, so I'm going to go minus 1 degree, maybe 1.3. That might be closer. And then I have probably some horizontal distortion here. Either that or the sidewalk goes uphill. So let's try going 10 this way. Okay, it's the other way. Minus 1, minus 2, minus 3, minus 4, minus 5, maybe minus 6. Based on the bottom edge of the building, although it now seems that the top of the building is crooked. So it could very well be there's something funny about the sidewalk there. Or it could be my rotation is too far. We minus 1 again on the rotation. Well, let's try the vertical correction and see what we get. I'll go minus 10 on that. Try to compare the size of the buildings with the grid lines. I think a little bit more. Minus 11 perhaps, and then it does seem I've gone too far with my horizontal, because I sort of expect that the decorative ironwork at the top would be horizontal. That's pretty close. Now I've lost the flagpole, so I would have to scale that down. And you can see by this new trapezoidal shape how much modification had to be done to straighten that building. I could then use content-aware fill and cloning to put parts of the image back in. I'm going to say okay. Actually, I think I'll just a little bigger here. Nope, 75. Say okay. So this is a straight building. This would be a good architectural photo, as opposed to this, where it has barrel distortion and it's looking slightly uphill, and I'm slightly off, being absolutely perpendicular in my position to the building with my camera. So that would be better, but I'd have to like put in a sky and the sidewalk, or maybe crop it more. Here's a house, another perspective correction. Command-Shift-R, lens correction. I was shooting uphill when I took this photo. This one was shot with a Nikon D90, and it does know what a D90 is. And we shot it with an 18 to 105 lens. So if I say 18 to 105 lens, there's only one 18 to 105 that fits that category for the D90. So that will take care of some geometric correction. You can see that correcting for some barrel distortion. Again, I'll use transparency, and when I go to the second tab, I'm going to let this scale down a little bit so you can watch the edges and see what happens. Okay, so I'm going slightly uphill. Let's try about a minus 10 on that, and that looks pretty good. I think I see some rotation there, so I'm going to go positive 0.5 degrees, and then check my alignment, the door, the gutter over here, side of the garage. This is pretty straight. It may not be perfect, but I don't want to take up a lot of your time on this. That's better than how it was. I'm going to say okay. Command Z. This is before correction. This is with correction. And for the area that is exposed, rather than using that edge extension, which tends to just blur everything, I'll try content-aware fill. And that's pretty good. And if I saw anything peculiar there, of course, with grass and trees and stuff, it usually works out okay. But if there's anything peculiar there, I could fix that with the clone tool or the spot healing brush. What was that one? Another building, Command-Shift-R. Again, I'm always like half a degree off, half a degree to a degree off in my rotation. Actually, I think this might be a full degree off in my rotation. I'll scale this down a little bit. I would think that probably since I'm looking up, I would need to give it some correction for the vertical. See if the windows on the first and second floor seem to line up. And then I'd have to figure out, I'd either have to decide to crop this out or try to fix this area by perhaps cloning. And this is a little tricky when it's in perspective. I could get away with something down here to just extend this. So for example, clone a bit of this in there and it probably would be okay. Again, like the street scene, I'm going to have to adjust my position for cloning every now and then because every one of these lines will be at a different angle. Could clone this up here. That's a little weird there. I might get away with something like any similar looking part of this window, line it up here and clone it in that way. I'll let kind of give it another set of bricks in it. Well, actually, that's a reflection, so that might be okay. So, you'd have to fill in things like that if you encountered this situation, or just crop it more. And I'll say don't save that. This is an image I stopped using a few years ago for assignments because it has a lot wrong with it. Obviously, it needed to be rotated. Image rotation 90 degrees counterclockwise. Then probably an arbitrary rotation using the ruler, there it is, or Command-Shift-R. And in here, this won't give you a camera on this one. This says it came off of a scanner because this was an illustrative photo for a wooden gazebo that was built in the lumber yard that was selling these kits. Then we had to find a garden scene and cut the two photographs together and then make another print from that paste up and then airbrush in the sky and the hills and the trees in the background. And one of the problems with it is that the lighting never matched in the garden and the way the gazebo was photographed. So it was just about impossible to get shadows that looked right compared to the lighting going this way. You can see that based on the shadow of the railing and the post, the gazebo lighting is coming from forward and from about this angle, whereas the shadow of the bird bath is going that way from behind. So one's coming from the front, one's coming from behind. The illustrator that put this together for me originally put a shadow in here to try to give the illusion that this was lit the same as the rest of the scene, but it obviously isn't. Anyway, Command-Shift-R. This could be rotated a couple of degrees. There's a slight vertical distortion that way. And then looking at where the roof line is, I would give it a horizontal correction to try to get the roof to appear to be straight to the camera. 111. And then I'll reduce the size on that one a little and possibly fill some things in. Okay. It also obviously has a color problem, which I could fix with an adjustment layer to be non-destructive. I would take my curves, gray value probably off of something like the bird bath, which I know is concrete and it's gray, or I could try the sidewalk here. Not sure I like that particular shift. Makes the wood look kind of green. The other thing you do is sample the white off of this. I happen to know that this was pure white, so that gives me a good, not only a white balance, but a D-min value for my image. And then I might want to just open the shadows a little, but not the mid-ranges because the shadows are really losing detail. And then what we usually did with this one is put a new sky in. There's also a white version of it. You'll see this is a sky that I created years ago that I use in a lot of things. Actually, the name of that file is Jeff Sky because it's my sky. I mentioned earlier I would probably show you how I did Empire of Light. This is where I first used that sky. I put that sky together for this particular image. It's a composite of two different sky photos because I wanted a particular cloud look and I had to combine images to get that. And then you'll see a bunch of layers here. One is there's this house, and you can see there's a mask on that house that masks out some of the trees and the sky that was behind it. And then another layer of trees is put in there, and that layer of trees is actually the same trees. If you look at it this way, that's that same tree line, just flipped over and made darker. Just a temporary mask layer that I probably don't need. This is a reflection on the supposedly wet sidewalk in the driveway. This is the reflection in the street. This is a Vivid Light copy of it to boost the color and contrast on that. So that's how that photo was assembled. And actually, this whole foreground, and this is not actually part of this image set, but from about here down, this stuff was all added to the original photo. It wasn't actually there. This is Jeff Sky again with a white gazebo. I did not explain to you much about this. This is a photo of a crumbling wall, and this is a copy of the middle of it to multiply it to intensify some of the color. And this is just to fill in behind there for the other stuff that's added in. There's a mask, block out the rest of it and bring in some black to the edges. And then I took this flat piece of wood. I took a photo of a flat door and took a section of that flat door and made the frame, the picture out of that. This is a section of it. This has, I think, been stretched in T-transform. I may have stretched that to exaggerate the wood grain. I may have only stretched part of it sometimes to give the appearance that the wood has a curve to it. This soft light layer is just stripes painted in white and gray to give the illusion of light modeling the surface of the wood to make it the shape that I think the frame should be. And so each of these sides was done the same way. Some were different sections of the wood, or some were distorted in different ways to get different wood grain, but it all came from the same piece of a photo. And some changes in lighting contrast. And this is a change in the curves for the crumbling wall. I went so far as to slightly curve the masks to give the three-dimensional appearance to the wood, and even made the edges a little rough to sort of suggest that those actually were pieces of wood put together. Another application of Jeff Sky. I just really like those clouds. This is a gazebo project where figures were added. I used to use this for Project 6B, but I really got tired of that really bad picture that was really hard to correct and really hard to adapt the shadows. You can see group 1 here is a lot of corrections to the gazebo itself, optimize natural correct color for it, and then the entire group is masked. This second group is just the shadow for the figure. It looks a little weird there because it has some warp on it. The figure is masked, which is how I expect figures added to be. And then there's a similar actually, I could drag this up here and eliminate that mask. Another figure was added inside the gazebo, and you can see that there's a mask for the opening in the gazebo in which this shows. Woody here has a mask, and then the masked Woody is masked by this mask up here, so he appears to be inside the gazebo. That's his missing arm. There are a few other adjustments to it.